Dating all the way back to the Founding Fathers, it's a national pastime to rank things. So let's do it for presidents. But this is an economics channel, so I'm choosing the worst based solely on economic policy. So inventing the swivel chair doesn't count. Being a jacked football legend doesn't count. Being the best at ordering pants.
Now, another thing with crotch down where your nuts hang is always a little too tight.
Doesn't count. We care about the fun stuff. Deficits, monetary policy, regulatory efficiency. All right, here's our list of presidents to start. The US has an incredible economic track record. Its economy has been growing, on average, at around 2% for its entire existence. This is rare. In history, most societies have a few famines, a Visigoth-induced collapse, or a couple casual centuries of misery. But when it comes to economics, the US looks like prime Gerald Ford. Pretty good. Now, it's debatable how much influence a president actually has over the economy, of course, but I think we can eliminate any president that presided over good times and didn't totally mess it up. So I got rid of all the presidents who beat the average growth rate and whose presidency wasn't immediately followed by a crisis. As long as you didn't fumble America's economic bag, you're off the list. Next, I'll invoke the Mount Rushmore rule. If you're on Mount Rushmore, you're off the list. Next, I'll invoke the trying to not trigger the entire internet rule. Probably impossible, but I'm removing all 21st century presidents. Okay, they all have checkered economic legacies, but there hasn't really been enough time to truly judge them, so they get a pass for now. Next, I'll remove presidents who died less than a year in. 19th century medicine eliminates Harrison and Garfield. Note, both would have survived with today's medical care. So this is sort of a silly video, but this shows that economic growth really does matter. Now, I still got a lot of presidents remaining, so to whittle it down further, I'm going to remove any presidents that don't have a severe recession or inflationary crisis under their watch. Okay, so we're down to just these guys, and we're ready to build a bracket. From 1800 to 1850, we have 4 presidents still remaining. Madison is the architect of the Constitution. Rule of law is crucial for growth, so the guy who wrote the laws for the most economically successful nation can't be the worst. He's off the list. Now, Monroe has a few financial panics on his watch, but they're short. He also reduces the government debt, has stable inflation, and his term is literally called the era of good feeling. So that's basically the opposite of today. He's out. That leaves Van Buren and Jackson moving into our finals bracket. In the late 1800s, we have 3 candidates left: Buchanan, Grant, and second-term Cleveland. Now, this is technically an economics video, but Ulysses S. Grant is the man. So much so that I've started a change.org petition to replace the Chad meme with Grant. So I'm not ranking him worst. He's off the list. Buchanan and second-term Cleveland are into our bracket. Early 20th century has only 2 candidates left. They advance. Late 20th century has 3. Nixon, Carter, and Bush won. Now, Bush is hit with a recession, but it's nothing like the economic calamities Carter and Nixon had. Bush also goes against his own party and jeopardizes his re-election chances by breaking a campaign promise.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
This is refreshing. He compromises and sacrifices personal ambition. Sounds like literally no politicians today. And those new taxes in the 1990 budget deal likely set the stage for high growth and government surpluses of the late 90s. So Bush may have lost re-election, but George, you get off this list, so there's some consolation there. Carter and Nixon round out our non-elite 8. In the sideburn quarterfinals, we have Andrew Jackson, Old Hickory himself. Sources vary wildly, but the man fought between 2 and 103 duels. You'd think how many men a president has shot would be tracked a little better, but apparently not. In this duel, he's up against his own vice president, the little magician Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren is known for deft political maneuvering, getting the VP nod because of the petticoat affair, which, if you're not familiar, is the 1820s version of the Real Housewives of DC. As vice president, he's heir apparent to the very popular Jackson and wins the White House after Jackson's second term in 1836. Then the economy is promptly destroyed by the Panic of 1837. But just like Van Buren's political success can be attributed to Jackson, so can his economic failure. I'll talk more about that later, but Jackson wins one more duel and he's on to the semifinals. On to the quarterfinals. two presidents you've likely never heard of, James Buchanan and Grover Cleveland, second term. Yes, America indeed elected a man named Grover twice. Now, Buchanan routinely shows up on president rankings as the very worst president in US history. He's president right before the Civil War. He pushes for Dred Scott, a terrible Supreme Court decision. He inflames North-South tensions. And when the South secedes, he just lets them take a bunch of government stuff. Buchanan's like a cook whose kitchen catches fire, and instead of doing anything is like, I got 5 minutes left in my shift. Hope the next guy's good. Luckily for the United States, the next guy was Abraham Lincoln, and he was good. See the Mount Rushmore rule. But this is a ranking on economics. All of this is politics. There is an economic crisis that Buchanan ignores, but ignoring economic crises is the modus operandi for presidents in the 1800s. So while Buchanan deservedly ranks among the worst presidents in US history, his failings are mostly political. Grover advances. Next is the biggest mismatch in the quarterfinals, Hoover versus Wilson. Look, Wilson's awful. He resegregates the civil service. His favorite movie is Birth of a Nation, which if you're not familiar is like Django Unchained, except Django is the bad guy. He wages a war on free speech, banning newspapers that criticize him. He's so bad, America never again elects somebody with a PhD. But Wilson is up against Hoover here. He was president for the Great Depression, a catastrophic downturn. I could flash all the stats, maybe I will. But I'll just tell you an anecdote. My grandparents were children during the Great Depression, and they both couldn't stop telling me how bad it was. My grandma said she literally had to go house to house begging for food. My grandpa was from a richer family and said it was also bad for him because people kept coming to his house asking for food. So the Great Depression moves Hoover into the semis. Lastly, we have the That 70s Shit Show quarterfinal. Nixon versus Carter. Carter is much maligned for being a downer. He gives this speech where he's like, hey, the economy's terrible and we are all poor, but maybe if you just wanted less stuff, it'd be fine. It's a trick I use often when my son asks for a new video game. I just respond, but what if you didn't? Works better as a father since I can't be voted out. So Carter is seen as this lecturing scold who doesn't do much, but the case can be made that he fixed a lot, it just took a while. The late 70s had record inflation, way higher than anything we experienced recently. Carter appoints Paul Volcker to run the Fed, and Volcker indeed beats inflation. It just took a few years. Carter also deregulates railways, shipping, and the airlines, bringing prices way down in those sectors. He also gets rid of Nixon's terrible oil price controls, paving the way for lower gas prices and US energy independence. Most importantly for me, he also makes home brewing legal, kicking off America's craft brew revolution. There's a case to be made Carter is the best president on economic policy, so Nixon advances. Semifinal number 1, Jackson versus second-term Cleveland. A farmer loved Jackson so much he gave him a 1,400-pound cheese wheel, and Jackson then just put it out and invited anyone to come eat it. So he's a man of the people, not elites. But see, sometimes you need elites. Like you can't put the cheese guy in charge of the central bank. That takes an elite. Nicholas Biddle is elite. Child genius, he graduates Princeton valedictorian at age 15. He's running the national bank, and he's done an excellent job. Jackson blames his political enemies, including the bank, for the premature death of his wife. So he has it out for the national bank.
Hello. My name is
Andrew Jackson.
You killed my
wife.
Prepare to die.
Biddle, like many elites, doesn't really have his finger on the pulse. In 1833, he causes a credit crisis, thinking it'll prove the usefulness of the bank. But all it does is get everyone mad at him for the crisis. Now, go with me here. It's kind of like when Kobe stopped shooting in Game 7 of the 2006 Phoenix series to prove he should shoot, and it just made everyone mad. No? Okay. Anyway, Jackson lets the bank's charter expire in 1836, and that's the end of the national bank. But here's the thing. Central banks can be very useful. If run well, they can prevent banking crises from spreading and keep the currency stable. Right after the bank goes down, there is indeed a credit crisis and a run on the banks, a pattern that would continue throughout the 1800s. So Jackson gives us all those 1800s panics. What's so bad about Grover Cleveland? Buckle up for more bank talk. In the 1890s, we were on the gold standard, meaning you could trade money for gold anytime you wanted with the government. So obviously the government needs a bunch of gold to maintain that gold standard. But people were losing their faith in the American economy after the Panic of 1893, so they were trading their dollars for gold, and the government was about to run out of gold. JP Morgan, the famous rich banker, doesn't want this to happen, so he gets a bunch of gold from Europe, puts it on a boat, ready to ship to the US, and then he goes to meet the president. And the president is like,
I'm not gonna meet with him, that's gonna look shady.
And then Morgan says, direct quote,
I have come to see the president and I'm going to stay here until I see him.
And the president sees him. And the meeting goes something like this.
So I got a bunch of gold on a boat I can lend to you. Here's the interest rate. So I sell government debt to you and just you, and no one else? Does anyone else got a boat filled with gold? And what if I don't borrow from you? Well, geez, the boat turns around and the economy collapses. Mass riots. You'll probably be remembered as the worst economic president ever in some future ranking. I want to be remembered fondly. Deal. Well, good news, Grover. You made the right choice. Bad news, no presidents from this era get remembered.
So yeah, being completely owned by JP Morgan isn't a great look, but the economy would have totally collapsed. And outside of that crisis, Cleveland's economic policies are pretty solid. And also, here's the thing.
It just seems weird that one dude has to bail out the US government. Like, isn't this something a central bank should do? Yeah, well, we don't got one of those. Andrew Jackson Vengeance murdered it in 1836.
Andrew Jackson, welcome to the final. Semifinal number 2, Hoover versus Nixon. Hoover is oft criticized for standing by and doing nothing as the economy tanked during his term. But Hoover was a man of action. He's an orphan and a self-made man. His relief work during World War I and its aftermath saved millions of lives. FDR, the man who would replace Hoover as president, said this about Hoover earlier.
He is certainly a wonder, and I wish we could make him president of the United States. There could not be a better one.
So Hoover, man of action, attacks the Great Depression like he had other crises. He did a lot. It was just all wrong. During a downturn, you want to encourage trade. Hoover signs the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which does the opposite. You also want to lower taxes to jumpstart the economy. Hoover does the opposite. You also want to lower interest rates to encourage lending. You can guess what Hoover's Fed does. So Hoover's characterized as doing nothing, but we actually would have been much better off if that was the case. Also, could he have really done anything? It's complex and sort of the subject of a different video, but we know one of the real issues at the time was the gold standard that made stimulating the economy very difficult. In the 1930s, once countries left the gold standard, they began recovering from the Great Depression. Literally, only one person in the world figures this out early. That's Takahashi Korekiyo, the Japanese finance minister. He's so good at his job that Japan never really suffers a downturn. Now, being good at his job also gets him killed, but that's a story for another video. So Hoover makes a lot of things worse with bad policy, but it should be noted that the celebrated FDR also tried a lot of bad policies. They were just sort of trying everything in this time period. What's so bad about Nixon? Well, Nixon's a bully, and he just sort of bullies everything he doesn't like. He bullies the central bank into lowering interest rates, and this helps his re-election, but long term it leads to spiraling inflation later in the decade.
You can lead him, you always have now. Just kick him in the rump a little.
The second terrible thing Nixon does is wage and price controls. Wage and price controls never work. They've been tried and tried, but repeat after me, politicians, price controls never work. People love them because they sound good. Prices are going up. I'll make raising prices illegal. I'm gonna bully the prices back down.
Invisible hand, eh? Well, meet my visible fist.
But the thing is, prices are important. They send signals and incentivize people. An increasing price tells buyers to economize and sellers to make more. Without the price signal, you get all manner of absurdity. Under Nixon's price controls, California was heating pools while the Northeast was freezing. Oil companies couldn't find workers to help drill oil in an oil crisis because they couldn't pay them more. And farmers murdered baby chickens. Yes, cute baby chickens, because the price of grain to feed them was rising, but they weren't allowed to increase the price of eggs. So bully the market at your peril. It will fight back.
Stop it. Stop it.
You can't bully us, we're already dead.
Hoover certainly failed, but he doesn't have baby chicken blood on his hands. Nixon to the final. All right, so we have Nixon v. Jackson. Now, to be even-handed, you can make the case I've been too hard on both of them. On Jackson's behalf, I'll say many people don't love the Fed, and some economic historians believe the US banking system was adequate during the 1800s. For Nixon, you could say a lot of the blame for the 70s inflation can be laid at the feet of LBJ's spending increases. So that being said, I'm going to determine our winner by deferring to a famous historian and descendant of two presidents, Henry Adams. This is his iconic graph. It shows energy use over time. Red is his predicted path, and blue is our actual path. Energy has a negative connotation because of pollution, but look, there's no such thing as a rich, low energy use country. Using energy is how humans raise their standard of living. It's how we grow more food and power medical and scientific advances. And energy doesn't have to degrade the environment. The safest and cleanest energy source by any metrics is nuclear power. And with it, we were well on our way to a cheaper, cleaner energy future. And Nixon was for it. But he started and empowered the agencies that ultimately killed nuclear in the US. We were knocked off the Henry Adams curve by agencies that Nixon is ultimately responsible for creating. An important lesson is economic growth isn't a given. It's not a law of nature. For most of human history, there was no growth. A country needs to create the conditions that empower entrepreneurs, scientists, and engineers to innovate, to drive that growth. Often what doesn't happen is more important than what does. And what didn't happen was our energy transition. Nixon wins. Did this video make you burn with the rage of 1,000 suns? Let me know in the comments. As always, head on over to our Substack for sources and more information on the video.